Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, and today I am doing the RPG Pundit Encounter, episode 16, which is, I guess, yeah, it is the last one of the year. It's been good so far. And today I am going to have as a guest the Greyhawk Grognard, but I'll introduce him in a little bit because, as you guys know, I don't have any of those fancy intros like Diversity and Dragons has, where he makes you watch these videos for like 15 minutes while people slowly wander in. But instead, we'll just chat for a little while until we get to the requisite number of viewers. So I hope everybody's having a good time today, and I'm glad to see you guys have come in already.
Yep. Hey, ERC, good to see you. And Chthonic Musings.
This will be different from most Pundit Encounters. Okay. For those of you who are coming in here that might not have been regular viewers of the RPG Pundit Encounter, I'll mention that the chat is welcome to make comments or ask questions. Unlike some channels, I don't put a condition of a super chat for me to read your question. If I find the question interesting, I'll read it. Of course, if you do a super chat, then I'll have to read your question unless it'll get me banned from YouTube. So that's one thing. And all monies from the super chat goes to the Domino Cat Toy Fund. She's out here somewhere. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I did a recent post. Domino has now, she's become a pretty accomplished little huntress. And like a lot of cats, she brings the prizes of her hunts into the house. And it's like really funny because she's been doing a lot of hunting. There's this kind of really interesting looking black moth with red fringers that is autochthonous to the region. And she loves to hunt those apparently because she's brought like 5 of them in over the years, over the last few days rather. And she still likes to collect occasional twigs, right? And there's these like little twigs that are from some plant that have like these dark colored leaves. And so I wake up one day and I'm there like next to the front door. I see this kind of like tableau of like a pair of like, it's like they were perfectly laid down, right? The wing spread of the moths. And then in between, there's this twig with these black leaves. And I'm like, oh my God, she's now 1 year old in cat years, which is, she's somewhere around 13 in human years, right? Equivalent. So I've just realized Domino's become a goth. She's entered her goth phase,
We have only indoor cats. And even on the occasion when we have a mouse in the house, they're useless. They couldn't catch the mouse to save their lives.
Oh, Domino is half feral and she has a real huntress instinct. She's started with bugs. Now it's bigger bugs. I'm pretty sure at some point she's going to bring in a bird or a mouse or a rat or something, but we'll see.
Shadow started off as a feral. My son actually found her in a abandoned in a school when he was working there, and he brought her here. She'd already had kittens. She was a wee little thing. But now she is like completely domesticated. None of the feralness has endured.
Yeah. What are we at now?
Yeah, ERC, this one's going to be a lot more interesting than Joe's rants.
I would think. I mean, I like Joe the lawyer, but I would agree. The RPG Pundit Encounter is always more fun than pretty much anything, except maybe on Wednesdays. I have to give it to Diversity and Dragons. He puts on a very well produced show. So while I have you guys, I wanted to mention that the Red Room store, in case any of you guys haven't heard this yet, is shutting down. Mostly from what I was told, it's because of the Portuguese tax law makes it essentially unprofitable for them to have it. So the Red Room is going to end up selling things out of Lulu and Itch.io, I believe, if I remember that correctly. Now, what that means is that the Pundit files will soon be disappearing. There are 40 issues of the Pundit files that are available only at the Red Room store. And, you've got all kinds of different topics, medieval authentic city guides, like the City Guide to Krakow that I've just put out, Gonzo setting stuff, a lot of the sci-fi stuff that's eventually going to become my next RPG, Sons of Heaven, some excellent, more kind of traditional adventures like the Dungeon of Doom, which is a collaboration I did with Sandy Peterson's grandson. All kinds of stuff, the Combat Wheelbarrow Maze, Medieval Warzone Encounters, High-Tech Ruins, Medieval Authentic Adventures like the Bones of St. Florian, supplements for Sword and Caravan, stuff for Baptism of Fire, weird magical objects, 40 issues. Every single one of those issues each costs $3.50. Okay, so if you can get $3.50, you can get yourself an issue of the Pundit Files. And my warning to you is if there's some issue that you were thinking of getting, you should get it soon, because when the Red Room store shuts down, I'm not sure what their last day will be. I should probably ask that, but I don't know right now. When that last day will come, then the Pundit Files are going to be out of commission for quite some time. They will eventually be brought back, I'm presuming, on drive-through, but that will depend on Mad Hermit Press, and the Mad Hermit Press has been a little bit busy lately, and it won't come. We won't dump them all at once, right? So, if there was an issue you were really thinking of getting, now's the time. Don't miss your chance. In other news, in case any of you haven't heard yet, my newest RPG manuscript is at the publishers now. It's Sons of Heaven, which is a sci-fi RPG that is essentially the Bronze Age collapse in space, and it's going to be an excellent product. It's the rules of it are obviously OSR rules, and it's going to have all kinds of very interesting stuff in it. And it's going to be, it's pretty classic sort of sci-fi, but it's going to be pretty different than a lot of the other sci-fi that you'll see. It's not generic like Star Adventurer was. It's a specific setting that has got some very interesting elements of setting and culture and everything. And I don't know when that's going to come out exactly. It was going to be published by Mad Hermit, but like I said, Mad Hermit has had some issues to deal with, and so they were kind enough to let me know that they probably couldn't do it at the time that I wanted. So instead, I checked with Mad Scribe, and Mad Scribe obviously wants to do it. They're the publishers of Baptism of Fire and the Last Vikings and Sword and Caravan. So we know it's going to be in good hands with them. And that's going to come out sometime next year, obviously. It's not going to come out anytime too soon. It'll probably be a few months. And I am already working on my next RPG, but I don't think I want to tell you guys what it is just yet, because it's still too early. I've just barely started, right? I'm on the research step. It's going to be a historical setting, of course, like most of mine are. I think you're going to find it, a lot of you might find it very interesting.
That is intriguing. Yeah.
All right, what are we up? 60. Okay, let's give it a little bit more time here. Anybody seen anything interesting in terms of RPG controversy? I was just telling Greyhawk Grognard here that sometimes on this show we talk about something that's happened in the recent news of RPG scandals or nonsense or whatever, but in this case. I haven't seen anything of sufficient value. I mean, there was Diversity and Dragons did that video yesterday about the transgender person who is in charge of layout at WotC, who went postal on some guy who was doing some kind of anti-trans activism. But I don't think that barely qualifies as RPG news, So I don't think there's much to say about that.
Well, it's not an RPG news, but Games Workshop is now charging $250 for one of their board games.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
someone pointed out to me. So just recently, I did a video that was about AI, right? And there's some people that think that AI is going to destroy the RPG hobby and everything right now. So, some people think that it's flooding drive through, and I went and looked, right, and I didn't see that, right. I don't think that there's a real menace to that either, because drive through for years has had 90% of drive through products are like trash product that just doesn't get anywhere, and that's what's going to happen with most of the AI stuff, right? Unless you're making you're using AI to make an actually good game. The fact that somebody will put in 100 AI stuff, yeah, okay, they will, and nobody will buy it, right? So, but one of the people commenting on that video said, you know what, I'm now using AI to design miniatures to make with 3D printing or whatever, right? And they look fantastic. And then he said, so they said Games Workshop is going to go out of business. Right, because everyone will be able to make really high level miniatures for
Well, that's already started. I mean, they're already. Yeah. There was that one guy in Italy. They just sent him a general C&D, even though most of his stuff had nothing to do with 40K. They just said, take all your stuff down. We don't like it. And then when he asked what specifically they were referring to, they refused to tell him. And then he had to take down his whole thing. It was crazy.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, I've never been a big Warhammer guy, but I like the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but I've never played the miniature games that much.
I don't know. I never got into any of the Warhammer stuff, 40K or fantasy. I don't like the aesthetic. It's just the big bulky armor with tiny little heads that never really appealed to me.
Yeah. Well, we should probably get started now. We're up to 22 people, and we're about 12 minutes in. And Greyhawk Grognard is not. He's got about 90 minutes, roughly speaking, right? So we're this is not going to be one of the super long episodes that we've had, right? It's going to be on the shorter end of the scale. It might be the shortest one we do. I don't know. We'll see. So to introduce Greyhawk Grognard, in case any of you looking at the episode are not familiar with him. So Greyhawk Grognard is a long time OSR personality. I'm not quite sure whether his blogging started before mine or after mine, but we've both been around for in the larger scale of things roughly since forever, in terms of the OSR, and he has been a blogger, and now he has a YouTube channel. I've put a link to the YouTube channel in the description of this video, so you guys can check him out there. And of course, as you can guess from the name, one of the central facets of his channel and his interests is the Greyhawk setting. I think it's fair to say that, right?
Oh yeah.
In addition to that, he has done some RPG products over the years.
He's got the old white covers. Jesus.
Adventures Dark and Deep. Yeah, this is the older edition, I believe now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I remember when you sent them to me to review, which I reviewed on the blog because it was quite a long time ago. You were kind of saying that Adventures Dark and Deep was a sort of thought experiment of yours that was based on the idea of what could have happened if Gygax had not been forced out of TSR and he made a second edition of D&D, how it would have looked like, or AD&D.
Right, because he had a bunch of articles in Dragon in the 80s about, this is the new direction that the game is going to take. This is what we're going to have. These are the new classes and stuff. And then over the years on the various Q&A forums that he did on Dragon's Foot and on other online forums, people would keep asking him about what it was going to look like. So what I did is I took all of that material and I compiled it into a document. And then starting with the first edition rules, I just made those changes. Yeah. So I created the new classes. I made the changes he was talking about. I fleshed everything out. I used a lot of his post D&D work as inspiration. Dangerous Journeys and so forth. A lot of that, made its way as inspiration into Adventures Dark and Deep. It's basically, this is the game that I wanted to play in 1986, and I never got the chance. So
There you go. So it's a very interesting product. It's not just a clone game. It is a kind of, it is I don't remember when this was actually first published here, but what is it? 2011. Yeah. Okay. So it was it was very much a part of what we call the second wave OSR, where instead of just making clones, you're making something to do with modifying the concept or the genre or what have you to produce a variation game of D&D.
Right, exactly.
And besides that, I'm pretty sure you've published a few other things. We'll ask you about that in a moment.
Just a few, yeah.
Yeah, we'll ask you about those in a moment. But the first question that we always ask everybody, which obviously gets different answers depending, because I interviewed some people here that like Alex Macris or Sandy Peterson or yourself who have been around for a long time. And then I interview other people who are like up and coming, very early stage YouTubers or game designers that are not that well known and have only been around for a year or two, right? So they're going to answer.
Whereas I'm down and leaving. So I'm not up and coming. I'm down and leaving. So
well, maybe so. I don't know. But the question I ask anyways, regardless of whether they are newbies or they're old hands at the hobby, the first question that I always ask is, who has been good to you and who has been bad to you?
Oh, geez.
Here's your opportunity to name names.
No, guy. If I do, that's going to start way too many ripples. In terms of people who have been good to me, I mean, obviously, thousands of people bought my books. You can't, I can't not thank them. That's, I mean, how better can you be to me than to trust in my work enough that you want to spend your hard-earned money on it? So right there. But I mean, I haven't really encountered all that many people. There's one or two people who just have it in for me because they just don't like me or they don't like my politics or whatever. But, I ignore them. I shoo them away, and, they try to knock me out of cons and stuff. And I'm just like, no, you're being nonsensical. So I don't want to linger on the bad people, but I mean, you get people like Eric and Joe, who I do the collaborations with every week. They're terrific. Eric's been a good friend of mine since the blog went live. May 2008, by the way, was the date that my blog went live. So I don't know if that was before or after yours.
No, I think I started the Pundit blog started either in late 2005 or early 2006. So just a little bit earlier than you, but.
So we got them. I mean, there's so many people have been so wonderful. Jay Scott is really big in the Greyhawk community. Eric Mona, who I actually used to be his DM when we both lived in Boston. He's the publisher at Paizo now.
Wow.
So we were
Eric Mona.
Yeah, we were big. That's my claim to fame. I used to be Eric's DM. So a lot of the people in the Greyhawk community. Just in general, Grodog is always been a pal and always been helpful. Luke Gygax has been wonderful. Every time I talk to him, every time I see him at GaryCon or wherever, he's always been nice. A lot of some of the old TSR folks, have been great. So it's just. I am always trying to focus on the positive. So that's what you're going to
see. That's part of why I make that the first question, because it's very interesting how people answer it. There are some people that don't really they try to avoid the whole thing altogether. Then there's some people that like yourself that say, "Oh, I'm going to just make this long list of thank yous to the people that have been nice to me." And then there's the guys that are like, yeah, there's this piece of shit over here that did this to me, 5 years ago, and they tried to cancel me and everything. And so, that tells a lot about the personality of the person being interviewed.
Get a few beers into me at a con, and you might get a different answer.
So, you mentioned there about the Greyhawk community, right? And I kind of like Greyhawk, but I'm not it was never a major setting that I played in a lot or anything like that. So I am definitely not part of that community. Do you guys have huge debates about things in Greyhawk? Like, is there
yes.
massive
Yeah.
flame wars that occur there about?
I wouldn't characterize them as flame wars. I mean, but there are disagreements on various things, like, is the elder elemental god really an aspect of Tharizdun? Really geeky stuff like that. But mostly it's the Greyhawk community is divided into two main threads. One is picking out every little detail in the published work and agonizing over it like a bunch of rabbis, which I love. I love doing that stuff. And the other is creating new stuff. They're now that they've opened up Greyhawk on DM's Guild, there has been a real renaissance of Greyhawk material coming out. It's all for 5e because it has to be because it's DM's Guild. But like my first book that I did there, the Greyhawk campaign guide, doesn't have any mechanics in it at all. It's just all lore, so you can do that kind of stuff. But since they've opened it up, there's really been a wellspring, an outpouring of new material being created, and I just love that because before then people were creating modules. I had a lot of stuff I still have on my blog. There's a lot of free modules and other material and stuff like that. But because it's published under the fan license that WotC has, it has to be free. This way, people can actually make a little money on it. So it really encourages things. But that's what I really love, is to see just this wave of creativity coming out from the fans that is honestly 10 times better than all the stuff that's being officially published by WotC.
All right. So I guess this was actually going to be my original second question. When you mentioned the Greyhawk community, I jumped in with that. That was impromptu. But so why Greyhawk? What is it about Greyhawk that made that your focus in terms of D&D settings?
Well, this was the main one that I latched onto when I was a kid. It was published in 1980, so it was I was 14 when it came out. The big beautiful maps like I have behind me. The folio with its very brief and yet entirely stimulating descriptions of things. It's almost Hemingway-esque in its brevity, but its ability to inspire. Gygax had a real talent for that. At least in the early days, he could get a little loquacious as time wore on.
That's true, also.
Yeah. But for me, it's the one thing I latched onto. I played in the City State of the World Emperor. I ran campaigns there. I did things in I did a lot of homebrew campaigns, but I always kept coming back to Greyhawk. There's just something about it that is so evocative and so welcoming to a DM, because unlike something like Forgotten Realms, it doesn't bury you in detail. I couldn't run a game in the Forgotten Realms. I would be paralyzed, worrying that I was going to do something that broke canon. And for me, Greyhawk just hits that nice spot of it's small enough to be digestible, and yet it's still got enough in it to give a lot of inspiration to the DM. I also like the aspects of it's quasi historical. There's a lot of the nations that you see in the setting, have obvious bases in European history and whatever. Paranland is obviously a pastiche of medieval Renaissance Switzerland, for example. Things like that, which makes sense because Gary Gygax was Swiss. But when you have that kind of mixture, because I majored in European history when I was in college. I'm a big medieval history fan and ancient history fan. And that hits me well. And it also, I love the idea that it has this kind of subtext of ancient civilizations being more technologically advanced or magically advanced or both. And the setting that it's in now is kind of in this post-apocalyptic era but it's not presented like that. It's presented as its own vibrant thing. But if you read the history, it's this is a decline from the heights that have been reached in the past. And we see, little pieces of technology here and there, and there's tales of more powerful magics that used to be around that aren't anymore. So I love that aspect of it too.
I see. So let's say that you ran into somebody who had never really heard of Greyhawk, right? Maybe a 5e D&D person or something, that they really have no clue about it. How would you, if you had to try to do a capsule proposal to this person, how would you sell them on Greyhawk?
Couple of different points. First of all, it's Gary Gygax's home campaign. So, if you want to know where the game came from, it came from here. It has a much more gritty sword and sorcery feel, much less, frou-frou high fantasy. It's much more like Conan and Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser than it is, something else. And I love also the, aside from the historical aspects of it, I love the idea that balance balance with a capital B is a powerful force in the setting. So it's not just good against evil. It's good against evil and law against chaos, and there's always balance in the middle that's keeping the wheel rolling. You have forces that are actively preventing either good or evil from rising or from staying on top. They want to keep the wheel moving, and I love that. You see that in some of the Gord the Rogue novels, where you have the druids and you have Mordenkainen and so forth, actively trying to prevent good or evil or law or chaos from ever becoming absolutely dominant. And I think that's a very important theme of the setting that I think drives a lot of its appeal.
Okay, all right, and let's say you had to be you were put on the spot, and you have to be able to answer, what is the one absolute favorite thing about Greyhawk for you? I know how tricky that is when you're talking about a world that you love so, that you're really involved in, right?
I mean, obviously there's an enormous aspect of nostalgia, so me personally, it takes me back to being in high school and college again. So from a personal standpoint, it's really, I think that really hits it for me. If I was saying what is my favorite aspect that somebody else might also enjoy, I think it goes back to the brevity, that it is consumable without overwhelming in terms of the way it's described.
Okay. By the way, guys in the audience here, I just wanted to check something with you. You might have noticed that my camera angle is different, and that's because I got a new a new computer here, and I just wanted to know if you guys are hearing me clearly, if it's all right, if the sound is okay. Greyhawk Grognard said it was okay, so hopefully it's all right. But I just wanted to check that. I forgot. I was going to do that at the beginning, but I forgot now. And just in case, I want to know if it's sounding all right. This is actually the first time I've used the webcam for it. So, okay, sound is good. All right, that's good. That's a very interesting point that Daryl Leret. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is that it takes back to D&D's pre-bloat days? Yeah, the Greyhawk. Yeah, Greyhawk was before you ended up having 20 million Forgotten Realms novels, right? Which is kind of part of your argument about the difference between that and Forgotten Realms. Yeah.
And same thing with Ravenloft. Ravenloft really saw that explosion of all the novels and everything. It's hard to keep up at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing with Ravenloft, the original Ravenloft module was very interesting. It was unusual for the time, and it certainly had interesting stuff. And then the setting, when it came out, was also quite good because it was like transforming D&D into like Victorian morality fiction, right? That was really cool. But the more they added to it, I agree, they kind of started to go away from its original purpose. I do know the Esnite says, my favorite thing from Greyhawk is the invoked devastation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of that's talking about the the lost civilization aspect that I mentioned.
Yeah.
The invoked devastation and the Reign of Colorless Fire destroyed two mighty empires, centuries in the past, and that kind of led into the current state of the setting that we see. But that's one of those things where the exact mechanism is not really known. It could be like a 10th or 11th level spells that were involved. There's a lot of unknown quantities there, which I love, and they don't feel the need to fill in every corner. That's up to let the DM worry about it.
Yeah,
I love that.
Eric here says it's weird seeing Pundit in summer clothes when it's winter up here in Michigan. Yeah, well, where I am, it is summer, and it was like today it's cooled down a bit now because it's nighttime, but It was like 32 degrees Celsius, which is quite hot. And let me just say this, you guys are very lucky that I have some basic sense of decorum. So I'm wearing this kind of Hawaiian shirt, as opposed to, I could have gone full Raji on you guys, and nobody wants that, like,
oh God, no,
the
nobody
last
wants
thing
that.
we need is the pundit going around bare chested,
On the bearskin rug. Yeah, no, let's not put that image into our heads.
We already have one of those maniacs in the OSR, and that's Jim Raji.
That's why we just last night we got 4 inches of snow, and where it's 32 degrees Celsius for you, it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit for me. So
yeah. That's pretty poor. Yeah. Mr. Ed says you can play in Greyhawk and not fear that you'll somehow ruin canon and will be contradicted by past and future releases. Yeah, well, that second part is the most important, because if you've got a setting and the setting has its basic canon, but you're running the setting, you're the DM, right? It doesn't really matter. But the problem becomes when you combine this notion of the official setting with products that then go around changing the setting obligatorily, which is what happened with the Forgotten Realms various times, right? That then if you don't do what they say, you now no longer fit the current releases, and that was like a disastrous move by TSR when they started doing that with all the novels that came out.
It's funny because I remember when the original gray box set came out for Forgotten Realms, and they made a big point of we're not ever going to detail this one kingdom.
Yeah.
Right. You could do. I forget what it was.
Well, that's why the first set was the best. It was. Yeah. You're right. They had way more detail, but it was standalone.
I love that gray box set. That was amazing. And almost immediately they went back on that promise and they did a whole.
Well, because of the novels, suddenly they saw like the novels became their cash cow and then ultimately their destruction. So,
well, that was because of Dragonlance. Dragonlance is what drove all those. The novel thing. They were making more money off of novels than they were off of games at one point.
Yeah, absolutely. True D&D OSR plays really giving the finger to canon. Yeah, I mean, I love it when I hear people, there are people running Baptism of Fire or Lion and Dragon or the Last Vikings, and they post to me about like really weird combos that they've done with that and like other stuff, and I'm like, some people might think I'm like, no, but this isn't historically accurate. No, I don't give a crap about that, right? I want to see what interesting stuff you do with the setting. Now, if you want to run it completely historically authentic, that's fine, right? And I'm quite happy for that. But if you want to like have Baptism of Fire with, I don't know, Mecca on it or something, like, go for it. I'm not going to be bothered by that in the absolute least. So let me see here. Well, are you currently playing or running D&D or other RPGs?
Only at conventions. I am between home campaigns at the moment, mostly for want of a place to do it.
I see.
But I've already got a list of players who are lined up who, if I can ever find a place to play, I've got a list of players. But mostly I play at cons now. I run a lot of games. I'm actually really delving into miniatures games a lot in the last couple of years. I go to a lot of historical miniatures conventions. Historicon in Pennsylvania is one of them. So I'm really into that. I've actually also run a bunch of Greyhawk miniature war games at conventions, which always get a lot of. There's always a lot of fun.
What do you use for the war game rules? Is it like chainmail?
My own rules, Swords of Battle, which are derived from first edition D&D, AD&D. But it's its own game. It's a miniatures war game. But there are classes and there are levels and there are spells. And when you go through the books looking for spells that would have any impact at the level of a battle like that, they're very few and far between. Most of the spells in the Player's Handbook and Unearthed Arcana are pretty useless when you're looking at a scale of hundreds.
Yeah, you have to get to like pretty high level spells for them to really be.
Yeah, even it's very there's only a handful of spells that really have an impact at that level. When you're talking about the numbers of people and the ranges, especially.
Yeah. Eric says, I do want to run Baptism of Fire totally authentic. I just got to convince the atheists in my group to play. Well, like obviously religion is a very big part of the setting of Baptism of Fire because it's set in early PS Poland, and you have the Polish crown is trying to Christianize Poland, right? And there's the conflict between the Christians and the pagans. But that is not to say that every Baptism of Fire campaign has to be centered on that subject, right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can be doing within that context, and definitely in a party, not all of your characters necessarily have to be fanatically religious. Just like anywhere else in 11th century Poland, you had people that were like really hardcore religious, either hardcore Christians or hardcore pagans or whatever. You had people who were mildly so, and you had people that were mostly just opportunistic, you don't necessarily have to play a holy man to be playing Baptism of Fire. Put Baptism of Fire into the Greyhawk world and it'll be great. Yeah, well, that's
you can absolutely do that. If you're doing post wars, you could have a part of the Theocracy of the Pale, which fanatically worships Foltus, the god of light. You could have them taking over part of the Duchy of Ten, and that would fit in perfectly in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm rattling off obscure little bits of trivia, but
I remember the name of that deity, and I remember the Duchy of Ten, so I'm not totally lost there. So Eric says 2 of us are born again Christians. I do want to focus on that. Yeah, well, that is funny though, because you'll be playing Catholics in the game, right? But still, the principle still stands, right? Okay, so have you, like, right now you're not running anything, but have you run games that were things like, in recent times, let's say, relatively speaking, do you run stuff other than Greyhawk, or are you pretty much dedicated to playing D&D and Greyhawk?
Basically, it's Greyhawk. I haven't run other games other than Adventures Dark and Deep or D&D in the last decade or so. I would love to run a Call of Cthulhu game though. I could really see having fun with that.
Uh-huh.
And back in the day, there was a game called Ringworld, which was based on the Larry Niven novels. It was a spin-off of the basic role-playing thing from Chaosium. And we had a fantastic game with that. It was like 4 of us, and we were all big Larry Niven fans, and we just had a blast with it. But that's kind of like I want to recapture lightning in the bottle,
Yeah.
But I would love to run a Call of Cthulhu game. That'd be a lot of fun.
Based on what you just mentioned there about Adventures Dark and Deep, so when you generally run Greyhawk, are you running it with AD&D First Edition, or are you running it with Adventures Dark and Deep?
Adventures Dark and Deep, but they're so compatible with each other. You could take a First Edition AD&D module and run it in Adventures Dark and Deep, and it's
they're at least as compatible as First and Second Edition, right? So
probably more so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in fact, it's designed that, I wrote one of the books, the Book of Lost Lore is what it's now called, was designed, like, if you're already playing First Edition, just get this, and you have all the new classes, and you have the new combat system, and you have the new magic items, and this is what you need, just to bolt it on as an extension. It's that closely.
He'd love to play Call of Cthulhu in a Greyhawk setting.
Now that you mention it, because I do have a Swords of Cthulhu book, which is basically Lovecraftian horror in a D&D context. And I have a module that I wrote called War from the Stars, which is a Lovecraftian horror adventure, and it is set in the world of Greyheim.
There we go. So there's a hint for you, Boomerman. You've got a
you might be able to find something of interesting
connection there. Yeah. Okay, we're pretty much zooming through my questions here. If you guys have if you guys in the audience have any questions for Greyhawk Grognard, please feel free to.
Looks like Daryl's got one
with them.
Daryl's got one on the novels.
Yeah, I see that. Just a sec though. Also, like if you guys ask questions and we find them interesting, you don't have to do a super chat or anything like that for me to read them out. If you do a super chat, then obviously I will read them out, unless it would get me banned from YouTube. And funds from super chat. Remember, right now we're not monetized. When I'm doing the live stream, I don't have monetization on. So the super chats are very welcome, and they all go to the Domino Cat Toy Fund. So Daryl says, I read a few Greyhawk novels. Were you a fan?
I was a fan of most of them. I am not a fan of the Rose Estes novels, and I don't think any real Greyhawk fan is. The ones with the wolf nomad guy who, it's too painful to even remember. But the Gary Gygax ones are great. A lot of the later ones are really, really good. Some of them are, individually they're not so good, but the ones with the Justicar are just absolutely fantastic. I loved I loved all those. So yeah, on the whole, I'm a fan of the novels. There are some individual authors, and there's an individual book here or there that aren't very good. But on the whole, I'm a huge fan, especially the Gary Gygax ones, because it gives me such an insight into how he viewed his own setting. How he, maybe not how he
Mhm.
ran it in real life, but how he would imagine
Yeah, how
he
he
would
envisioned
want
it.
to run it. Yeah, his kind of vision of how it should be run. Rather than everybody always goes into Castle Greyhawk, it's this wide ranging wilderness thing with towns and bandit encounters and politics and stuff. I get the impression that's not how it was in reality, but I love the fact that it kind of shows you how he wanted it to be perceived.
Well, I have to admit, I'm well known these days for having now proudly spent what is it? It's probably 15 years now that I've abandoned. I've decided that the novel was a mistake for Western civilization. So I don't really read novels anymore. But I remember when I was young, the only time I tried to read one Gygax novel, I think it was from a library or something. I was a teenager, right? And it was one of the, I think, Gord the Rogue novels or something, and I just could not get into it. I'm sorry to say, I don't
I
know.
love the Gordon Rogue novels. I love those. I love the peeks into the setting that he gives us.
To be
I mean,
fair,
it's
even at that age, I was a bit picky, right? Like there was a lot of fantasy novels I'd be reading. I'm like, I don't know, this isn't working for me, like I never
not
got into, like, I was never one of those guys that read every single Forgotten Realms novel or Star Wars or Star Trek novels or any of that, right? Like it was
there was a
I was already
time when I was
very,
reading every Star Trek novel that was coming down the pike, and that was rough sometimes.
yeah,
They
yeah.
they
I,
can't
would,
all
I wouldn't
be.
put up with that. Like I learned somehow at an early age that the whole idea of I've got to collect them all is really stupid. But
I don't know. I'm a completist when it comes to that kind of stuff. I have all the Conan novels, and you know, even the new ones I've got. I've just got to have them all.
so Joe says I enjoyed the Hamlet of Volage. I plan on buying parts 2 and 3. Is that something that you made, or is that?
Yes, that's my introductory first level module, which is kind of a
Oh yeah,
play on the village of Hamlet.
yeah. I
Eh,
guess
eh,
that.
Yeah. It's what I wanted to do as an intro for new players and beginning characters. I wanted to have a series where one module was an urban adventure or village, another was a wilderness adventure, and then it ended up with a dungeon crawl. So I wanted to, it was very self-consciously divided up into those three kinds of adventures, just to show how, how to showcase each different type.
Wow. Robert, thank you for your service. You're doing great work here tonight by watching multiple. I'm assuming that they're all RPG streams while having dinner with your family. That is true dedication. Um,
I'm picturing like the architect in the Matrix,
yeah.
with the multiple TV screens.
Well, there's Oda Manjiro says you like the first 2 or 3 Gord the Rogue novels.
They're definitely the
All right,
strongest.
man.
The
Scribe
fourth
is here.
one it's kind of iffy, and then they do go downhill once he realized that he hated TSR enough that he just wanted to blow up the world. So
this is from Mad Scribe Games, who's one of my current publishers and is now going to be the publisher of Sons of Heaven. He says, "Hi guys, just popping in. I played D&D since '82. My group tended to use homebrew worlds, so I'm no Greyhawk expert. If I wanted to start a campaign in Greyhawk, where should I start?"
the best place to start, honestly, is Village of Hamlet / Temple of Elemental Evil. It's been called Greyhawk's starter zone, and it is for a reason. Especially Village of Hamlet. That is just such a sublime introduction to the world and to D&D in general. You have this very well-defined village. You have the moat house, which is a nice, easy, containable dungeon, and yet it's still very fun to play in and has a lot of the classic things that you expect. It's a little harder for a beginner to tackle the Temple of Elemental Evil itself, because it's not a standard go in with guns ablazing kind of thing. You have to learn the art of infiltration and stealth and everything. So it can be a little jarring for new players, but I think the Village of Hamlet tips it over the top. That's the place to start. It is just the village itself and the moat house are just such um, uh, perfectly designed, perfectly described areas. You can't go wrong with that. I've run a bunch of campaigns that are just in Hamlet and the Moat House. This was before Temple of Elemental Evil was even published, and it works great. It's a great starting zone. You can use that as a base and do all kinds of other stuff around it.
There we go. That's a good answer. I do remember that the Temple of Elemental Evil. I mean, I don't remember. I was again a teenager when I played it. It was pretty challenging. Yeah.
Well, I have a sob story about the Temple of Elemental Evil. When it first came out, I was at Gen Con, and I remember it came out on a Saturday. They didn't have them on Friday, but they had them at the dealer's area on Saturday. And that was the big thing. And I was right at the front door when they opened, and I ran right to the TSR booth. I bought the first ever sold copy of Temple of Elemental Evil, and
Really?
Gary Gygax signed it as
Wow.
such. And couple 10 20 years later, I'm like, I'm never going to play D&D again, and I sold it for a penny. To this day, I am kicking myself, and if the person to whom I sold it is watching this, I will buy it back from you.
I don't think you're the first guy in this series of this show to have had that exact same kind of story of I had this fantastic thing, this RPG product, and then I sold it. And I think that anybody who's been playing RPGs for as long as either of us have some element to that story. Like most of the stuff I sold or gave away is stuff that I don't particularly need to. Like I never had a signed copy of anything or something like that, so it wasn't that big a deal. But there have been a lot that over the years, at some moment I was like, yeah, I'm never going to use this, and then like a year or two later, I'm like, damn, I wish I had that book right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm the same way with my war games, because I kept moving and moving and moving, and I kept shedding my war game collection. So the last 15 years of my life has been spent repurchasing my war game collection, my old SPI and Avalon Hill games.
Daryl Errett says, used as a model or template for creating homebrew worlds, how would Greyhawk rate?
In terms of I wouldn't say anything about the design itself, like the physicality of it, the mountains here and the seas here or whatever. But in terms of how much detail you want to put into a setting, I think it's ideal, because you have these. It works both ways, right? Because there's two ways to do a campaign. You can do a campaign by starting on a single hex, and then you build out. You start playing in there, and then you build out by need. Or you can start off with a generalized idea of what the world is, and then you kind of get more detail and you work that. Greyhawk is ideal for that because it is so sparsely detailed, but it's still yet evocative. But on the other hand, you could also use it, that same level of brevity means you could just pick a hex at random and start fleshing it out, and then you've got this framework already out there. So I from the standpoint of how much detail you should have, I think it works very well. I wouldn't, you don't necessarily have to say, oh yeah, I've got to have an evil demigod over here, and I've got to have a group of monks, white supremacists down here or whatever. But in terms of the feel of it, um, the level of detail that you feel that you need to have, I think it works well.
Well, look, I'm not nearly an expert on Greyhawk as you are, but it was my impression from some of the things I've read. Like, I don't believe that Gary Gygax started by having the entire world, right? Like, it started,
Well,
and then it got built onto it, right? Like,
it's kind of weird because the genesis of it was they did a war game campaign before D&D was ever a thing. They were doing medieval war games, like fantasy kind of war games,
yeah,
and they had this campaign called the Great Kingdom. And there are some, and maps are floating around. You can find them
yeah,
online, and it's the world kind of looks like the world of Greyhawk behind me. Not in all of its details, obviously. So he had that to start with before he even imagined that there would be a fantasy role playing game, let alone that he needed a world for it. He had that to build on. So in that case, he actually had a model of a whole continent that he could
yeah.
draw on to then turn into the world of Greyhawk.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
you're
like, I
right.
remember that there are stories about like some of his players, some, which were like some of his family and, Rob Kuntz and people like that. Gradually, each of like Ernie Gygax had one part of like, there was a kingdom that was like um, kind of connected to him. And I think Luke had another one and Rob Kuntz had another one. And like, this is it gives you the impression that it was gradually like, especially the area around Greyhawk and it's
Well, the players would develop, because remember in the old DM's guide, they had those rules for developing your own areas, right? And
strongholds and everything. Yeah.
right, you'd clear out the wilderness and you'd make a
Mhm.
stronghold and stuff like that. So in that respect, yeah, we know that Tensor had a castle and Mordenkainen had a castle and so forth.
Yeah.
Lord Robilar had a castle on the Wild Coast. So yeah, that was absolutely part of the game back then because they had a much more of a wargaming background. They were used to not just playing with individual characters. They were used to a game where you ran a kingdom. So naturally for them, the progression was, yeah, I'm going to start with this one character, and then eventually he's going to have his own land to rule, and his own army and everything. So that was just
Mhm.
back in the 70s. That was what they came from. They're
Yeah.
playing game. They're reading like the Tony Bath books on war game campaigns and stuff, and so that's the culture they came from, which was lost almost immediately by
When
the
you get
time
into the RPG
1980
level,
rolled
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
lot
I
of that in
think,
the DM guide, we had no idea what to do with it. It was like same thing um, with the rules for dungeoneering, like in the player's handbook and in the DM guide. It assumed that everybody was going to have basically their own Castle Greyhawk, right? Just a
yeah.
huge sprawling mega dungeon, as we would call it today, and that was your campaign. You would go in and there would be all this weirdness happening in the underground environment, and they had specific rules in there for that. That's when you talk in the rules. It talks about having a caller and things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. Because they envision having a group of 12 people,
Yeah. A
but
mapper,
it
a
was
caller, the whole thing.
yeah, but they would envision that it wouldn't be the same group every night, right?
Yeah.
Because in Gary's campaign, it wasn't. It was just whoever was free on that night, they would all show up at Gary's house, and then
Yeah.
the next night it would be a completely different group of people, and there might be some people who were at this one and that one, but not this one, and that's where you get these rules for the strict timekeeping records must be kept in order to have a meaningful campaign. It's because of the way Gary's campaign was run, and a lot of the campaigns that you see in the middle 70s, like college campuses and UCLA and stuff like that, where we read about these in the early days in a lot of the zines and alrums and excursions and stuff like that. They played like that. But by the time AD&D came around and my generation discovered the game, that was gone.
Yeah. It was
And
totally
we had
different.
no models for it because they had only published smaller tournament modules. So
Mhm.
we had no way of knowing what that expectation was. Like, when you see advice for players in the player's handbook saying, your mission for that evening is to find the stairs to the next level. Well, when you're running all of the Fire Giant King, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
It only makes sense if you're running a sprawling mega dungeon campaign where
Yeah.
levels are important like that. So there was a real disconnect because we never had a model. We were never given Castle Greyhawk to say this is the environment that you should run the game in. We were only given Steading of the Hill Giant Chief or Village of Omelet or something like that with these tiny, teeny, tiny little dungeons. And the rules, there was a disconnect between the rules we were given and the examples of dungeons that we were given. And
That's true.
unless you had that background with somebody who started playing in 1974 and learned from somebody in Lake Geneva who then took it to UCLA, who then,
Mhm.
when they went to graduate school in Dallas, they taught that, unless you had that, you had
Yeah.
no idea what these rules were talking about.
But in a way, that was also kind of the maturation of the game, right? Because
Oh, absolutely.
because it went from that, like it was very much that was very rooted in kind of the war game concept, right? Albeit it, reducing the war game to an adventuring party, right? Versus how very quickly after RPGs started being their own thing, it turned into this idea of world building and world creation, and that the world had to make kind of sense, right? Like, ironically, one of the least historically accurate elements of most fantasy RPGs are dungeons, right? Like and when you think about it, they don't make any sense, right? Almost always the dungeons are created by some crazy wizard who fills it with monsters and with traps and with puzzles that you're able to solve, right? That they sometimes even leave like hints for, right? For how do you solve it, right? As if the wizard wants you to get his treasure, right, or whatever, right? Like it was always one of the parts that to me didn't fit in at all, right? But
it's really cool because early on in the OSR, when we're talking about like when your blog started and a few years before that,
yeah,
we were trying to figure out that code. We were trying to analyze the first edition rules to figure out what was missing. Right? It
mhm.
was up for first couple of years of the OSR. It was all analysis. It was all
Yeah,
talking about, this is how things were done back then, and we would read the old zines, and we would do all these things, and we would be having all these discussions across, my blog and your blog and
yeah.
Tankar's blog and Grognardia. We would all be
Yeah,
having these
it
cross
all became
conversations.
very Talmudic at certain points, right? It's
Yeah,
like
but it
I
was
always described it in my blog as the people who are trying to find the true D&D, right? Like the
Well, I
original
think it was a
purest version of
necessary
the game.
I think it was a necessary step in the evolution of the OSR because without that foundation of analysis, I don't think we would have seen the level of quality that you have in first wave OSR games and second wave OSR games and the settings and the modules and everything
Third
that came
wave, yeah,
after them.
third wave OSR games. Yeah,
Yeah, third wave.
that might be
I
true.
honestly think that taking that time of reflection and self-evaluation of what it is we were looking for. What was it in the game that we played as kids that we wanted to recreate? Without those years of reflection, I don't think we would have had nearly as much quality product as we have today.
So I'm going to get back to this in 1 second, but first, Adino the S Knight said, "Loving My Baptism of Fire PDF, fantastic book." Well, you've got both halves of the people who made it here. So Mad Scribe is in the chat, and he gets 50% of the credit for the incredible work he did in the publisher side, and of course, I wrote the book. Thank you very much, Adino, for that. And Mad Scribe, incidentally, says, "I want to thank the Greyhawk Grognard for taking time and effort to produce such good content on his channel. I know YouTube has become inhospitable lately, and it's a thankless job." Like, I'm not. I've heard a whole bunch of people saying that.
Yeah.
And yet it has. I have not been affected at all. If anything, my views have gone up. Right? Like, I've heard like these guys. The guys that are complaining about this are the 5th edition people, right? And I think that they're confusing the thing that, YouTube has become hostile to our algorithm or something, with the fact that just who the hell wants to hear about 5th edition now, right? Like, 5th edition's dead. 2024 D&D was a complete disaster, right? It like lost 90% of its customer base.
And so having written for it, I know why.
Those videos aren't popular anymore, right? But I'm getting exactly the same or higher views than I was getting, a year ago.
My channel's exploding. I mean, I went for I hit my 10,000 viewer mark, I think in August, and now I'm at 14. I'm my channel, and I know Eric's channel, and I know Joe the lawyer's channel, we're doing great.
Yeah,
I think it's
I'm
because
doing great too. I'm pretty sure
we're
Diversity in
sincere.
Dragons is doing really well. I'm sure there's a lot of these guys that are doing well in the OSR, right? Like the OSR, I think, was pretty much immune to the consequences that these other bigger 5e channels have had. Like they're complaining because they used to get 80,000 or 100,000 views for a video because that was the peak of 5e's popularity, and now they're getting what,
They're comparing it to what happened in COVID. Yeah, I mean, sure, people aren't just locked in their apartments watching videos all day long.
Yeah.
But I think it's something else. I think it's also it's a question of sincerity and enthusiasm. I get comments on my videos all the time that people can tell that I actually love about what I'm talking about. I honestly, looking at some of these other channels, it really feels like they're just going through the motions. Like they're getting
Yeah,
AI
yeah. Well, I
prompts,
mean,
like they ask ChatGPT, what should I do a video on, and they do it. And
so many of the 5e influencers on YouTube are just so obviously grifters, you know, like
yeah, I mean, and some of them weren't. Like Jenny D. I mean, she hates me, not me personally, but she hates people like me because she doesn't like my politics.
yeah, but she's definitely a grifter. I mean, like,
but early on in her video career, she was a lot more enthusiastic. She was a lot less selling things, right?
Yeah.
She was making centaur costumes and, genuinely seemed to love what she was doing. And nowadays, and I don't watch her regularly anymore, but nowadays she seems just kind of like, I'm doing this because I have to do it because I need the money.
Yeah. Well, so many of these people, that's the thing, right? These guys are getting
I might be wrong.
They were getting 80,000 views or whatever, right? And then they got hooked on that, right? Like, and I mean, none of us get 80,000 views, right? But we're not doing it for that, and most of us are not expecting to earn a living from YouTube, right? Like, I mean,
I think I've gotten 80,000 views on like 4 videos.
Yeah, but the money I get from YouTube is tiny compared to what I get from my book sales, right? And
absolutely.
In fact, the way in which my channel is important for my business is not because I get YouTube money. It's because every time I do a video, my book sales go up for the next 24 hours, right? Because people watch my video and they go, oh, that looks like an interesting game that he's got there.
Mine is the same way. Yeah. Exactly. And I try not to hammer home the promotion of my books because my channel really is there to help the Greyhawk thing. My books are, I have some Greyhawk books, but my channel's really there just so I have an outlet to share this stuff with.
Yeah.
But I see the same thing. When I do a video and it gets a lot of views, I get a spike in my book sales. So there is a correlation there. But for me, that's just, it's nice. But you're right. The money you make on YouTube, unless you're, like Professor DM or something like that, and probably not even him. 100,000 subs is not what it used to be.
Eric also bought World of the Last Sun. Our other GM would be perfect to run that. Yeah, World of the Last Sun is great. It's Gonzo gaming. It's my setting, and it's a very modular setting, right? Because it's a gigantic world, and I only highlight certain parts of the world, so you can like pick the sections that you want to use or not, or you can add them to other parts, to your own game world. So it's
is that like a Dying Earth kind of thing?
It is, yeah. Very well. It's a really weird Gonzo world set, theoretically set in the extremely distant future. What's this? I love cyberpunk like Greyhawk Grognard. I love Greyhawk. I wrote my own Savage Worlds conversion. Well, that's one area that is there. I mean, there are cities without number. I think is kind of cyberpunk, and New Flesh from Red Room. But there's still a lot of room for people to do cyberpunk stuff for the OSR.
I'm surprised they haven't done a new version of the cyberpunk RPG from like the 80s or 90s.
Well, there was one. There was one a few years back. I mean, I guess it might be about 10 years back now. Yeah.
It went right over my head. That might be part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, the art in it was pretty controversial. I seem to remember.
Okay. Yeah,
love the Adventure the Adventures Dark and Deep. You made commercials?
You didn't see those?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we there are 4 commercials that were actually running on Paramount Plus for
Wow.
a while,
Wow. All
and
right.
um, it's harkens back to old school D&D. You know, it looks like it was made in the 80s, and it's a little cheesy, but it's a lot of fun. And basically, my son was a big theater guy in college and in high school, and he got some of his friends. I gave them some money, and gave him a script, and I said, make me a commercial. And we did it in such a way that they could shoot one commercial and then chop it into smaller ones. And yeah, they were on. I've put them in various places. They were on Paramount Plus. They've been on Google Ads. I haven't put them on Facebook yet, but that's probably coming up soon. And there's
Hmm.
some other things where you can do streaming TV. Where you could buy commercial time very cheaply on streaming TV.
And have you
So,
have you seen results from this?
oh yeah. They haven't quite broken even yet, but for me, honestly, it's more. As far as I know, I'm the only person doing this.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
Mad
just,
Scribe, there's an idea for you. You
yeah, yeah.
know. Meanwhile, Mad
I've actually
Scribe
got,
is here posting conspiracy theories. USAID gets cut, and WotC and many left-wing channels start failing.
but I've actually had a couple publishers come to me and ask me for the contact info for the director of the commercial. So
Really? Oh,
hopefully
that's
Andrew
great.
will do a thing. But it was a lot of fun. They're in their costumes. They're playing Adventures Dark and Deep, and then they're their characters, and then it flaps back to being at the table. It was a hoot to do, and even if I never recoup the cost of making the commercial, it was like $1,000. Yeah, fine. It was so much fun, and it's so good to know that it's there. And I every once in a while I'll splice them into my commercials, and there's
That's great.
somebody on another channel who our channels kind of like each other. He's put it in his videos too, so it's just a lot of fun to do. But yeah, we've got commercials, and if you want, I can get a link for one and put it in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, I guess so. What was I going to say? Richard here says, I'm starting my camp. He's talking about World of the Last Sun with posh elves living in the Skylands. That's great. I love the posh elves. They're hilarious. I don't know, Eric, if you're aware, but so World of the Last Sun is the longest campaign I've ever run in my life. It is now on its 13th year, playing every 2 weeks. And there is another channel, not this channel, a channel from one of my oldest ongoing player, Bill the Elf. He's not a posh elf, he's a hipster elf, but in any case, he has recorded from I guess it was 2019 or so. From then onwards, every session we've run, and he's recorded the audio and he posts it on his channel. And besides his jiu-jitsu videos, that's the only thing he's got on the channel, right? So if you want to see how I run World of the Last Sun, check out the Bill the Elf channel, and you'll be able to not see me, but you'll be able to hear how we run the game. And the posh elves are hilarious.
And I put the link in the private chat because I can't type into the comments here. I'm not.
How do I put that into the comment? Oh, geez. Now we've got a problem. I don't even see where did you put that?
The private chat, the studio chat.
Studio chat. Where the hell
in
is
SteamYard?
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. Let me copy that, and then I will put it on the actual chat. Hopefully this works.
There we go.
All right. So
that was such a hoot to see.
Pundit, did you lose a ton of weight as domino hunting? No, I haven't lost weight. My weight has not changed at all in 20 years. I've weighed exactly the same for the last 20 years. So I have not lost any weight. It's just that as Mad Scribe pointed out, during the colder months of the year, I tend to dress up. I'm wearing a professor's jacket and the scarf and everything. So maybe it looks like I'm more weighty than I actually am. But I'm not especially thin, but I'm definitely not overweight either. So there we
And
go.
thank you, Quentin. I appreciate you liking my temple stuff.
Question: Castle of the Mad Archmage. Lots of products for it. What product is the complete dungeon? There you go.
Castle Mad Archmage core levels. This is what you want. It's got all the main levels. It's got all the maps and everything. It's all one book. Pretty massive.
All right.
There are some side levels, but you don't need those. This is the full one.
So you might notice that I've got my longest pipe going. So this is where we're getting into some serious business here. Recently, there's been a lot of talk, rumors for the most part, that Wizards of the Coast might be doing something with Greyhawk, and the kind of the justification of these rumors is, as far as I know, still a rumor that another rumor. I mean, that Luke Gygax has been tapped by Wizards of the Coast to be involved in some kind of a project, and so there I've seen some people who are fans of Greyhawk that are basically excited about the possibility of Wizards of the Coast doing to Greyhawk, a new book. And my question to you is, would you actually be excited about current day Wizards of the Coast doing a Greyhawk book? Like, do you want, 3/4 of the Circle of Eight to be strong Black women? Is that your
goal? Well, it would depend. And let me just say, I've heard these same rumors. I don't know anything more than anybody else does at this point. I do know I'm not involved in anything Greyhawk wise, official WotC stuff. So I'm coming at it from the same standpoint as you are and everybody else. It's just rumors. And I've heard other rumors that it's like the Greyhawk thing and 6th edition and Luke and different permeations of it.
Yeah.
Who the hell knows what's going on?
Well, I don't know what the hell is going on, but what I can say is that we know what has gone on in the past, right? So they destroyed Waterdeep. They destroyed Ravenloft.
They destroyed the whole Sword Coast. Let's don't limit the damage.
Entire Sword Coast, correct. They destroyed Ravenloft. They destroyed Planescape. They destroyed Spelljammer in as much as it could be destroyed. They ruined Dragonlance. So why would any Greyhawk fan want them to actually put out a Greyhawk book? Right? It's that's gonna be terrible.
Well, okay. They did include Greyhawk as the sample setting for the 5th edition 2024.
Yeah, it was like 5 pages, right? Like
it was maybe 15 pages. They made some changes because they had to put in tieflings and dragonborn and all that crap.
Yeah.
I kind of retconned all that stuff out in my campaign guide.
As well, you should.
Yeah. I mean, there is a place for Dragonborn in Greyhawk. It's just not in the Flyness. It's in the Sundered Empire on the other end of the continent. But those are technical things. But I did like the fact that they included Greyhawk, and because it was such a brief overview, it was hard for them to really mess anything up.
Yeah.
And it got a lot of people noticing Greyhawk. So in that respect,
also it was so early in 5th edition's history that it
in 2024's history, because
sorry, I thought you meant didn't they do that with, maybe I'm remembering wrong now. This came out last year.
Okay. Or early this year. It was in the DM's guide for the 2024 rules.
Oh no, that's right. I'm thinking of 3rd edition Greyhawk.
Oh yeah, no, that was
because Greyhawk was the default setting for 3rd edition, though they never did anything else with it either. There,
except that then that's a whole nother
I do not think. Sorry, I do not think that Luke Gygax being involved in any project that WotC does will mean a goddamn thing, right? Because Luke Gygax is not a guy who has had a history. He's not Christopher Tolkien, right? He's not a guy that stood up for his dad when Wizards of the Coast claimed that Gary Gygax was a racist, sexist, homophobe, right, or any of that.
Well, I'm hesitant. I don't want to criticize Luke because he's a friend of mine, and I can understand his reticence. But honestly, in terms of actual participation in a project, I can see WotC want, and again, I'm not saying this with any kind of insider knowledge. This is just me, expounding. I could see them wanting him as a face, attaching his name to it, so they've got the Gygax name on it. I can see them doing that, but I don't see him having any real design input into a new set of rules or whatever.
No, they're using him for name recognition in a completely mercenary way. Yeah.
But it could also be signaling that they're, trying to backpedal a little bit on the anti-Gygaxian stuff by, hey, we've got a Gygax attached to this. So if that's what they're going for, I reserve judgment. But in terms of Greyhawk, because I've heard all kinds of different things, and I'm not sure that the Greyhawk thing and the 6E thing are together. I think there might be parallel things going on. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I've heard so many different versions from so many different sources that, there's something going on. There's something going on with Greyhawk, and there's something going on with 6E, and there's something going on with Luke. What those connections are, I haven't the foggiest idea.
Well, the until now, the worst edition, I mean, not in terms of personal preference, though I would say that was a terrible edition, but in terms of, actual sales and whatnot, was 4th edition, right? And Wizards of the Coast made a very big mistake with 4th edition, which is that it was very, very early on that they realized that it was not doing well. But like a money pit, they just kept shoveling and shoveling and shoveling to try to hope that they would somehow turn it around, right? And then it was a problem that lasted for years. It's possible, even though none of the same people are there anymore, it's possible that they might have learned that lesson and have decided that 5.5 edition is a disaster, and they're going to try to make a new edition as quickly as possible. But again, unless they change everyone involved, unless they get rid of all the people there right now, it's going to be the same result.
They've gotten rid of the entire creative team almost. Nobody's left at WotC to write anything.
No, but the people who are there now are worse, right? It's like, who are you going to get? Are you going to get like Justice Armin and what's her name, the autistic chick, to make that game? It's going to be a fucking disaster.
That's what makes me think they're not. And bear in mind, one of the things, I forget which one of the talking heads for Hasbro or WotC said this, but they said that franchising was the direction they wanted to go. And I wonder if they're not just going to cut their losses, give it to somebody else, give somebody else the Dungeons and Dragons franchise.
Well, I've always said that was one of the real possibilities now, because they've basically gutted the D&D team.
And, exactly. If all you need is a franchise management system, you don't need a creative team.
Yeah,
and it's cheaper. And all you do is collect.
But it's also a way that they can get out of a trap that they are in, which is the woke DEI element of their corporation. Where if they said, no, we're going to do it ourselves, but we're going to fire everybody here because they've all been useless retards, that is not going to work for them because there'll be too much internal and external criticism, right? But if they say, well, we're just going to franchise it, right, and we're going to give it to Larian or somebody, I don't know, whoever, to make the games for us, it's a way to get rid of all those people without suggesting that their woke era was a disaster for them, which it was, right? So it's
but I don't think they see it that way. Honestly, I don't think they see it as a disaster, because for the same reason that a lot of these movie studios, the message is more important than the profit, and some of the companies are changing, are realizing that that's not right.
Some of the people involved are
I don't see Wizards
diehard believers. You're right about that. But there's also like a lot of these corporations, like including the movie studios and whatnot, are starting to realize that no, they do not actually have, no matter how many investors they have, they don't have infinite money that they can just keep squandering away, right? So they realize that however much, even though they are all a bunch of liberals who love this stuff, who love the idea that in the 6.5 edition books, there's like 80% of the characters are strong Black women, and the rest of them are all transgender. That has been a complete disaster, right? Economically speaking, because they can blame the gamers, the terrible gamers who refuse to accept the new order, or whatever. But when it comes down to it, at some point they've got to start making money again, right?
Which is why I think what I think is coming through the filter is a franchising something or other, whether it's Gale Force 9 or Mongoose or somebody else, just give it to them, give them a 10-year license or whatever, wring as much money as you can out of them, and then move on to the next one, and we'll just sit here collecting checks and making video games and licensing things, and maybe and don't forget they have not given up on that damn AI stuff. They are hot for that because they have not lost sight of the fact that they want EverQuest. They want just people having that subscription.
Yeah.
And if they can have somebody else make the rules, and then they have their VTT where you have to pay $35 a month to play. That
but the storied and disastrous history of the multiple attempts to create a D&D VTT, right? Like the Wizards just is cursed on that note. D&D Dad and Son, yes, I that was actually who I was talking about. Mackenzie de Armas is the name of the supposed game designer, though apparently it later came out that she did none of the design. She just had these notes. Oh, like what if I was a character and I invented the deck of many things, and I'm a lesbian, autistic paladin who created the deck of many things, right? And then she went, they had this other guy. The guy came from Paizo, and he would have to write all the rules for her, but then she would take all the credit. That's how it went.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay.
Well, it's from the Book of Many Things, which was one of the late term D&D supplements for 5th edition.
That explains why I have not seen it.
It creates this whole retcon story about these two lesbian lovers who created the Deck of Many Things, and it's just complete bullshit. Boomerman, I am smoking Argento Roots right now, which is what I smoke most of the time lately because I love it. Yeah, that's called retconning, exactly. Yeah, she was the autistic paladin was gay and in a relationship with a Medusa. Exactly, a good Medusa, because all monsters are good now.
Yeah, like that beholder in that abomination of a art piece that came out a month ago.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. These people. I liked John Delarose's take on it, right? Which is that, the beholder has the power to charm person and stuff, right? So basically that the beholder had just made everyone in the village gay. So I was watching a couple of your videos in preparation for this. And I thought it was very interesting. You had a video that was called What Defines the OSR. And you made a very good point in that video about how in the 1970s, everybody was essentially making their own game, right? Like they were taking the rules and creating their games. And we were talking earlier about the kind of the early stage of the OSR, where people were trying to find the pure version of the Ur version of D&D, right? Some people more than James Malazewski was one of the early guys who did that sort of stuff. That's another massive grifter.
In fact, he's still blogging, and I had no idea.
Yeah, well, because he destroyed his reputation with that dungeon that he failed to produce, that then Autark had to pay for. But in a way, that early period created two different branches that came out of it, right? And the majoritarian branch ended up being the people who switched, in a way, the OSR from the first wave, which was about the preservation of these products that were no longer easily available to get at that time,
right,
into an actual design school, right, which started with the second and third wave OSR. and that's what most of the OSR has become now. It's about creating interesting variations, right? Stuff like Baptism of Fire and so on, and for that matter, Adventures Dark and Deep, from the original concepts of the clone game, right? But then the other side of it, which lingered on for a while, and then got picked up by the people that call themselves the Bro SR, were these people that became like reactionary, fantastical fundamentalists of the game that said, no, you have the only game that you should ever play is AD&D first edition rules as written, right? And they're like, and constantly trying to come up with this stuff that they make it a presentation of it as like this kind of authoritarian thing, right? Like in old school, people use chainmail rules for combat in D&D, you know, in original box D&D, and so everybody should use chainmail, right, and stuff like that. And that is just like, I've been arguing with these people for years now, for a number of reasons.
It's bullshit. It's complete.
It is. It's total bullshit. But it's because they're created an imaginary past that never was. And in fact, the real old school period was exactly what you're talking about. That people were constantly making their own variations of what the official publications were doing, and it was like super creative.
Because remember, back, I forget what year it was, 79 or 80 or whatever, Arms Law comes out. Yeah. And all Arms Law is, and eventually it turns into Rollmaster years and years later.
That's right, yeah.
All it is a series of like 20 cardstock things. It's an alternate combat system. And it's got those hilarious critical failures, critical misses, and, you trip on a hamster or whatever, just hilarious stuff. But that's all it was. It was just a combat system. It wasn't a game. It serves zero purpose unless you're going to put it into another game. And we would do that constantly. We would take, Melee and Wizard from Steve Jackson games, and we'd use that for our combat system for a couple of months. And we were still playing D&D as far as we were concerned. We would use the magic system from Chivalry and Sorcery, and and throw in all kinds of other stuff from another game. It was still D&D. We didn't differentiate. The only people who did that were like the people who were playing RuneQuest. Oh no, we're playing RuneQuest. We're not playing
the Puritans.
Yeah, it's like, okay, fine. You be over there. We're gonna be using RuneQuest's combat rules over here now. So you just play whatever you want to play. But we didn't differentiate, and we just called it D&D, and we didn't care. Yeah. And it's the innovative spirit that I really
was the real spirit of old school, which is the irony of this. Right. It's just like every reactionary movement in history, right? Like they want to go back and say, well, in the olden days, everybody was, strictly following these rules. And in fact, almost always in the olden days was where you had like massive different schools of thought and creativity going on, like in
just
whatever, talking from religion to politics to anything else,
Look at Dragon Magazine. Look at the first 50 issues of Dragon Magazine, or White Dwarf, or Alarums and Excursions, for crying out loud. It's all variants. It's all just new stuff that people were just throwing out there because they had a creative itch that they needed to scratch, and they did it, and they would publish these little things on mimeographs and everything. It was a heyday of creativity among the fan community, and in some ways, AD&D was a reaction against that. Well, Gygax famously wrote that because an editorial.
Yeah, Gygax had a number. Like, first of all, Gygax never played AD&D rules as written, right? That has been confirmed to me by multiple people, including Rob Kuntz, right? And what he made AD&D first edition for was, first, to screw over Arneson, right? Second was to create a set of rules that would be used for tournament play, right? So in a convention, when you're playing a tournament game, an official D&D game or whatever, those are the rules so that there's no debates, right? Like, and that sort of thing, right? And third, it was to this new edition that it turned out to be very successful, right? That would include a whole bunch of material that a lot of it had been previously published, as you point out,
Yeah.
That he brought together. But it wasn't like even a very coherent game, actually, because it was picking and choosing from a whole bunch of other stuff that had been done in isolation,
And some of the stuff I guarantee you was never play tested like that. He just wrote stuff
Of
down.
course. Yeah. And I mean, I never met in the old school period. I started a bit later than you, but I never met anyone who played first edition AD&D rules as written with all.
I don't think it's possible.
I don't think so.
Because the rules contradict themselves in places. So I don't think it's literally possible to play it as written.
And the modern version of those fantastic old magazines that you were talking about is Mad Scribe magazine, which people should check out. Mad Scribe.
Got to get the plug in.
Yeah, I have zero. Well, I don't make any money off of Mad Scribe magazine, but I want to help out Mad Scribe on that. I have zero faith that WotC will attempt to fix the problems they've caused with D&D. To do that, they'd have to acknowledge doing wrong. The woke always double down to the detriment of profits. Yeah. Well, but the thing is, they can also change things without admitting they were ever did wrong, right? And that is very common with woke people, right? Where you have like these people that for years say something, right? Like, yeah, oh, it's wonderful that we're bringing all these people in or whatever, and then later they're like, yeah, no, we were never in favor of that, you know, like that sort of thing happens quite often, and that might be what they do, or they just don't say anything about it. They change it, but they don't say anything about it, you know.
Quentin,
driving and dragons makes a very good point. The Bro SR also like to take credit anytime someone revisits an older concept. And here's
Quentin has a very insightful. This is very insightful here.
Yeah, Quentin Bauer. Hey, that's I worked with him too on what was it, Raiders of Riley. Have you guys followed their Exodus rollout? Hasbro is pivoting to video games with TTRPG books as ancillary merch. Exodus looks like it's going to be a huge win for them. That's interesting. I haven't looked into that very much, and I probably should.
I've not seen Exodus, but I mean, Hasbro is looking at the piles of money they've made from that Monopoly app.
Yeah, the Monopoly
and they're
Go.
Thinking, we have Monopoly Go. We need D&D Go. That is
That's what they want. They've said that. They said that openly, back when it was what's her name, Cynthia Williams.
Yeah, guarantee you that's what they want.
Yeah,
they just want people to just, like Mr. Burns when he had the casino. The people scuttle in, drop off their money, and leave. That's what they want.
Well, that was always the problem with D&D. It never it was never able to make the level of profit that a big corporation the size of Hasbro would want, right? Like it's just not built that way, right?
No, so but a medium-sized company,
you have to change it into something it isn't.
The trouble is TSR squandered so much of the money that they were making, and they had all these stupid little things that they were doing, like cookbooks and quilts and needlepoint sets and crap like that,
which is what we're back to today, by the way, right? Like there's been a crocheting book or something like that, and there's been these D&D themed cookbooks and stuff like that. They want to sell it as a lifestyle brand, right? And that's a big deal for them.
Okay,
right?
now you just pushed a button on me here with the lifestyle thing, because I vend at conventions a lot, and there are two kinds of vendors. There's the vendors like me that actually sell games, whether or not you're a publisher or you're a game store or whatever. You sell games, and you sell things that are directly related to games like dice.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The other is the lifestyle vendor, and they're selling the plushies, and they're selling the wooden plaques, and they're selling the dice towers and all that crap, and they're making more money than I make every single time.
Sure.
And it's more than a little annoying. But the thing is, people don't, there are people for whom gaming is a lifestyle. They don't necessarily care about the game itself, but they're part of the lifestyle. It's like fandom.
Well, the biggest proof of that is Critical Role, right? Like it was determined quite early on that 50% of Critical Role fans have never played D&D and have no interest in playing D&D. Right. So exactly. they are part of the D&D community, but their aspect of the D&D community is that they are people who watch Matt Mercer and company play Critical Role, right? That's it. That's what they do. And they consider themselves part of the community, and they demand to have an equal voice, right, in the community. And that's where you get into real problems.
Exactly. And that really, I think that's a big problem. It's almost like they're parasitic. You
Yeah.
know, they're taking creative energy away from the gaming community that actually plays games. And this applies not just to RPGs. This is a big thing in the board game community too.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not nearly as much in wargaming because it's hard to there really isn't a lifestyle wargaming thing. You either paint the little lead miniatures or you don't. But with board games, it's more of a it's hard to describe. There's just people who like to be thought of as board gamers because it's chic. And it's the same way with RPGs. All my friends play RPGs, so I need to pretend to be interested in RPGs.
Mm.
It's that's when they get the
Yeah,
little
well,
beholder
a few
plushies and all
years
that.
ago, D&D became fashionable, right? And that was a problem because then suddenly you had these people that had no real interest in D&D, but it was the cool thing to do, right? So they
Well, I
they would hang
You're
these
not
on.
wrong, but I also don't want to get caught in the trap of, looking down on the newbies
No,
because
no, I'm not saying that. Yeah.
some of the tourists do turn out to be do turn into gamers at some point.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make them feel
But
unwelcome.
a lot of them stay as tourists, and as soon as it becomes unpopular, they go away, right? Which is
Exactly.
often
Exactly.
a problem for companies that think that they won't go away. that's,
Well, that's what
that's a,
that I think
that's
is
an
what
issue.
you're seeing with the AI push. They want to get their hooks into them, and they know that there is a certain population that will sign up for a 12.99 a month and forget that they have it, and they will just let it go until their card expires.
Yeah.
It's cynical, but I guarantee you that is a part of the calculation.
Geek Media. Well, in the case of the Critical Role fans, they might have been buying Critical Role merch, but they weren't buying D&D books. They just didn't care about the game. Like to them, the important thing was the drama of the improv acting, which is Critical Role, right? That's what they like to watch. So they were probably buying a lot of Critical Role merch, but they weren't buying D&D books. Yeah.
Yeah, although it's funny because I will sometimes if I'm in the grocery store or whatever, I'll see somebody with a D&D shirt, and I'll walk up to them and say something. And it's like, oh well, yeah, I don't really play.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like wearing a Thor's hammer and not being also true. Okay, fine.
It's crazy. Okay. Well, we're already past the 90-minute mark here.
Oh, no,
So
we can. Yeah, I got a little more energy in me.
all right.
I
Let's
took
see if
Dayquil before I came on, so
I've covered most of my questions, but we'll see if anyone else has anything else that they wanted to ask you or me or a topic here. Well, Daddy Stab says, "What are your favorite OSR games?"
well, other than my own, because I'm going to plug my game, Adventures Dark and Deep.
Obviously.
But other than that, my favorite OSR game. Well, I mean, this is going to swell your head, but I love Arrows of Indra.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a big fan of India, kind of a fantasy India thing. I'm watching all kinds of the fantasy Bollywood movies, and my God, those things are wacky. They make '80s Swords and Sorcery movies look like nothing.
There it is.
Yep, I got my copy behind the curtain here.
Well-worn copy of Arrows of Indra.
That's a good one. I mean, obviously, you got the classics, Osric. There wouldn't be an OSR without Osric, honestly. So just from a historical standpoint, you got to put that into the mix.
That's true. It's interesting though that Osric was pretty much the first standard bearer of the OSR, so to say. But like after that, the evolution of the OSR moved much more towards the direction of basic expert set
Correct.
as being
Yes,
the central system.
Swords and Wizardry eclipsed it almost immediately.
Yeah.
Because it was simpler.
Yeah,
It's
and
funny
then
though, because
Labyrinth
now
Lord. Yeah.
Labyrinth Lord is kind of trailed off. I personally like Labyrinth
Well, it
Lord
was
better than Swords
supplanted
and
by
Wizardry.
OSE, right? So
Yeah. Well, the OSE. Um, I how to put this? I'm a little distressed by the recent trend in OSR games that are too stylish. They're too what's the because I don't want to say that the rules are lacking. They seem to put too much emphasis on the physical design of the book.
It sounds like you're thinking of a specific book here that you don't want to
Well,
name.
OSC is the one I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Because it's very polished design and things,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of its popularity stems from that rather than any
Well,
inherent
sure.
coolness of the rules themselves.
Yeah.
Because I've only played it once, and it was okay, but it's from a strict rule standpoint, it's just one of 1,000 games out there. I think it only owes it. Well, and again,
Yeah, and
I don't want to
it's
knock.
a very late clone, right? Like there are already other clones of there are several clones of the basic expert rules,
Even
and
a
yet
clone, because it does do things a little differently in a lot of
a little
places,
bit,
but
yeah, but
it seems like it relies on the physicality of the book
yeah, maybe.
rather than you couldn't just take those words that are in the book, put them into a file, and have it be anywhere near as interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas if you took you know Osric is practically a text file.
It is, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
almost no there's tables, but that's it.
Yeah.
But the rules aren't as reliant on the physical format as they are in
Well,
some of the newer games like OSE, and there's a couple others whose names elude me, but you
mhm.
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. But
And I think
that's the way of the hobby, right? That you have to have high production values if you're, it's part of the, like, I know that there are a number of RPGs that are quite good, OSR RPGs or RPG products that they were very good in terms of the content, but the presentation was not, they didn't have enough art, or their art wasn't very good, or it wasn't as nicely done in the layout, and they sell less, and they never reach the same level of popularity as other books that are often potentially much less interesting. I mean, Morkborg is practically nothing, right, except art, and
okay,
it sells like
that's another one I
crazy.
was thinking of. I couldn't think of the name. Yeah,
Timothy Shanks, you're saying, how did it eclipse it? Well, what I mean by that is that in terms of what rule set became the kind of core rule set that most second and third wave OSR books are based on, is the basic expert rules. And I just did a video about why that was, right? So if you look in my list of recent videos, you're going to find that. And
and Timothy, if I may just interject here, I think you just answered your own question. The second half of your question is many of us just kept playing AD&D.
yeah, true.
Yeah,
Also,
exactly. You don't need Osric. That's kind of the point. It's a very literal restatement. Polishes little things here and there, but it is a restatement, and I think it was made because originally the concept of Osric was we want to be able to let publishers do AD&D modules.
yeah, exactly.
And if you said you were
Yeah.
Osric compatible, that meant everybody knew you could play it with first edition,
And that was at a time when there was no print on demand,
right?
and so it was becoming increasingly expensive to buy old used copies of AD&D books, right? So
Exactly, exactly.
yeah.
And because that's the whole point. Osric really wasn't originally intended to be a game that people played. It was a way for publishers to
That's right.
publish first edition modules.
Yeah.
Um, and like you say, you just kept using your old books, and so why did you need Osric?
Yeah. Geek Media Central says, have either of you played Index Card RPG? I have never played it. I'm familiar with it, but
I'm
I
not
have not
familiar
played
with
it.
it at all. I can guess at what it is from the name, but
Yeah. Yeah, art can make or break an RPG. It's very important to the product. That's absolutely true, and the like that falls into part of the AI debate in RPG field,
we could do a
because
whole video. We could do a whole show on just art. AD&D. D&D art.
yeah,
With the new crap that they have in there. Because I
well,
in
the
my
art
books,
in the latest edition of D&D is one of the reasons why it was a huge turnoff to people, right? Like, it was terrible. So
well, I mean, because like in my books, and Shark, I do agree with you. I wasn't trying to say otherwise. But in terms of who plays which game, Osric is absolutely foundational to the OSR, but
Mhm.
a lot of people didn't play it as a game at the time. That's why it was eclipsed by Swords of Wizardry and Lambeth Lord. Anyway, but when I do art in my books, I deliberately all my books are black and white interiors, except for the 5e stuff because it's 5e and it has to be.
Mhm.
But for my Adventures Dark and Deep books, everything is um, black and white line art because I'm deliberately trying to evoke the feel of the 70s and 80s first edition stuff. And
Mhm.
one thing I noticed, especially you see this in the Monster Manual, they would have different artists with wildly different styles on the same
Yes.
page.
Yeah.
And I deliberately try to do that because I art direct my own books. And I
Mhm.
deliberately try to juxtapose artists with different styles on the same page or close to each other, specifically to bring back that feel
Yeah, if you're
of
trying to evoke that particular style, right? Like
exact.
a recent game that has done a really great job at that is Barrows and Borderlands. You know, because it's even it came out in 3 little booklets, just like the
Yeah.
original white box D&D. But it's based on that rule set, but it's got like this wild Gonzo aspect to it that makes it just fantastic. You know, I was blown. Like I think that was the best, apart from my own games, it was the best game of 2025. You know.
So okay, can you bring up D&D Dad and Son's comment here because he makes a really good point, and I want to ask a question about this. So, as a consumer, you would be reluctant to buy an RPG with crappy art. Let me ask you this: This is my core. This is Adventures Dark and Deep core rules, and I know that the light is shining on it, but you can hopefully get a shot of that. So, I think this is really cool cover myself, but before I go on, do you agree that that counts as good art on the book and something that might induce you to get it? Um, yeah. All right. Yeah, I'll assume your answer. My point is, another game has that exact same art on it. It's it's licensed, and that's a big thing that I'm starting to see is that artists are are putting their artwork up for license as professional. You see this on drive through all over the place. And in fact, my book was confused for this other game. It's like a miniatures game or something. And my book, people kept thinking that my game was like linked to that game because we
Oh,
use
wow.
the same cover art. And but if you're if you're a publisher, you have access to really amazing art for next to nothing. I didn't have to spend $5,000 to pay an artist to do that. I licensed it for $25 on drive-through, or some other site. So it's amazing what you can do nowadays for art, where it's not AI, and yet you're still able to support a living artist. And I think
Mm.
that's all. I think that's very important because a lot of people are, you're talking about, oh, I don't mind AI art. The only reason I mind it is because I've worked with artists for years on my books, and I don't want to screw them over. You know, yeah, I'm using stock art, but I'm also using, art that I commission. But either way, money's going into an artist's hands, and I think that's a good
Mm.
thing. And yes, I'm working on a shoestring budget, just like most small publishers are.
Yeah.
But I think using this kind of stock art, which in my mind counts as good art, um, I think it's an avenue that a lot of publishers need to explore. Although it's funny, I did my Cthulhu book a few years ago, and I used stock art for the cover. And my sister-in-law gave me a Chia Cthulhu for Christmas that year. And on the box of the Chia Cthulhu, it had the same art as my book. It was flipped, but it was exactly the same picture. So the Chia Pet company uses stock art on their boxes, which I
That's
thought was
wild.
just amazing. Anyway, that's
Well,
my
I mean, I've had a lot of via my publishers, of course, because I don't publish my own games, right? I'm fortunate enough that I'm well known enough that if I'm writing a game, I get publishers that want to publish it because they know they're going to make good money off it anyway. Um,
Well, and I got you to consult on my one book. I'm like, Wuja.
That's right. Yeah, I did. That was the one that was basically your Oriental adventures, you could say.
Right.
That's right. But I've had a lot of cases where it was like the art was the thing that slowed down the entire process of publishing, because they either got it wrong or they didn't, they don't really care about deadlines, stuff like that, so I don't have the same kind of admiration for a lot of the, like, and also the cost. It's usually one of the largest costs involved,
Yes. And again, using stock art can help mitigate that cost, especially if you're a new publisher.
But there's also the question of, like, in terms of like context of a setting, right? Because if you're doing a generic fantasy thing, yeah, you could probably get a lot of stock art that'll be good enough, and that will be suitable, But if you're doing something like the sort of stuff I do, some of my books, you can do it like, Lion and Dragon is mostly full of actual medieval type art, like art. Some of it is like actually medieval, some of it is stuff
like
from
woodcuts
the 19th
and stuff,
century and stuff like that. A lot of it is essentially now free art, right? That is, that is long past copyright or anything. But when we're doing Baptism of Fire, there wasn't enough to do that, and instead, like, the problem with AI is that people still don't know how to curate it the right way. Most people, right? But luckily, Chris Miller is a goddamn genius about that, right? Like, this cover alone. Ironically, this cover originally was there was an art piece that he commissioned to make it, right, and it just didn't quite come out right. Like, it wasn't good, right? It wasn't good enough, right? I'm not saying it wasn't good. It wasn't quite. It didn't have quite the impact that I had hoped, right? And so then they based using that piece that was already paid for. It was enhanced with AI stuff, and it was like, I think that this cover made it a bigger success than it otherwise would have been. It was like, I think it's probably the fastest RPG that I've published that got to gold bestseller. So. Cool. Yeah, so I'm sold on it as long as the publisher actually knows how to do it right. Like in the case of Chris Miller, for Baptism of Fire, he programmed, let's say, the AI to make use of a specific list of 19th century mostly Slavic artists, and to derive the AI art from that. Right. And so it all comes out having a kind of consistency to it, and it looks really good.
Daddy Stabs, my book is called Swords of Wuja. It is available on drive-through. It is a fantasy China book. It's kind of because back in the day when Oriental Adventures first came out, I always thought it was too Japan focused. So I wrote a book that it was Oriental, but it was ninjas and samurais and stuff.
Yeah, it was a big mix, actually. It was like, Gary Gygax liked, Shogun, and he liked Kung Fu, and he liked some of the martial arts. He just threw in everything into one setting.
But I wanted something that was strictly China, right? So it's based on Chinese folklore and wuxia movies, and so it's got hopping vampires and hungry ghosts, and it's got a kung fu system, and RPGPundit was a collaborator on the original version. It's now it's been renamed and expanded. I put in random encounter tables for the setting now.
That's good.
So it's it's for me, I love it. It's one of my favorite books. Because I grew up watching kung fu movies, and one of the things that I put in there was an obscure movie called the Flying Guillotine, and I actually included the Flying Guillotine as a weapon type.
Yeah,
just because I didn't, it's not intended to be a historical RPG. This is a supplement that you can use with any old school game. It's got new classes and new races and new monsters and magic items, all that good stuff. But it's all based on Chinese folklore and these classic kung fu movies. So, Swords of Wuja.
Well, okay. Gary had nothing to do with Oriental Adventures. Names on the cover because he wrote the core rules. All right, fair enough. But
Yeah, pretty much.
the principle is still there. It was obviously a bit of a kitchen sink setting, you know.
But if we can, I'm gonna ask to wrap it up because I'm rapidly fading here.
All right. Well, you've given us an extra half hour pretty much, so that was great.
Yeah, we broke the record. We're not the shortest ones, so we're good.
There is one final question that I always ask. It's all everybody always gets the same first question, the same last question. So of everybody who's been on the show so far, I asked them this with first giving the context that I'm a huge RPG guy, right? Like I love playing RPGs and I do it on a very regular basis. I'm running 3 campaigns right now and all that. But other than that, I basically have no involvement in any other kind of nerd hobby, right? I don't play video games. I don't watch anime. I don't collect comic books. I don't buy science fiction novels or fantasy novels. I don't read novels. I don't collect Funko Pops. I don't play German board games, right? I don't do any of that stuff, right? I don't watch anime, none of it, right? Like it is the only really traditionally nerd thing that I do, right? Like, I mean, I'm an academic, which you could say is another type of nerd, right? But that's a whole different story, right? So the question for you is, how much of a nerd are you? Because we know right now already that you're a big war gamer and you're a big RPG guy, right? And how otherwise, how much of a nerd are you?
Oh, I don't think we have time.
You read fantasy novels.
Yeah, fantasy. I got a whole stacks of fantasy and sci-fi novels. I've got a whole collection of ElfQuest. I'm a big Star Wars and Star Trek fan. I met my wife in a Star Trek fan club.
Okay, that is nerdy.
So that might give you a little thing. I still have a bunch of toys. I've got a Steve Austin doll and a Maskatron from back in the 70s. I've got action figures and so forth. I'm a big sci-fi fan in general, fantasy fan in general. I've got a whole closet full of DVDs and so forth. I watch Star Trek constantly. I literally I've got the TV right here. My desk is right here, and during the day, one flavor of Star Trek or another is 50% likely to be on that TV. I I'm deep in on multiple fronts.
There we
I
go.
cosplay. I just finished. I just did the final pieces for a great Pike era Star Trek cosplay that I have yet to roll out. But
so we got a $10 super chat here from Patriotic Gestalt. Thank you so much. That's a great
way to go, Patriotic Gestalt. Thank you so much.
I'm very grateful for that. That'll be going to the Domino Cat Toy Fund. And yeah, so the contest is to see, who's the least nerdy guest that we've had. And at the moment, I guess right now it's still Driving and Dragons, who plays D&D and does no other he has no other geek hobby. And on top of that, he, hunts and he fixes old cars, which are kind of like anti-nerd hobbies, So he's second place is the Dungeon Minister. But
and I used to be in the SCA a lot. I did a lot of stuff in the SCA. I actually got 3 girlfriends from the SCA, but the wife came from the Star Trek fan club. So yeah.
Well, there you go. I'm afraid you're somewhere down at the bottom of the list then in terms of the least nerdy guest. But
I'm not a furry though. I never did that.
That's good. That's something at least. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
It was a pleasure. Timothy Shanks, you missed this. I mentioned it earlier. I mention it pretty often. Like novels are called novels because they were a new style of literature that were created in the late 18th, early 19th century. And having assessed their impact on society, I've decided that although there are some good novels, on the whole, it was a bad idea. It would have been much better if we'd kept up on on studying, ancient myth and legends and chronicles and things like that.
Well, not everybody can enjoy Punch and Judy as you do. So
Yeah, fair enough. So that's I basically stopped bothering with reading novels. I read a lot of nonfiction, but I'm not a novel guy anymore. All right. So
does occultism count as nerdiness too? I don't know.
Not the way I do it. If I was a Wiccan or something, maybe, but all right. And still says, yeah, still the unbeaten champion driving in dragons. You wouldn't have a D&D or OSR without novels. Well, that is technically true in the sense that obviously fantasy and sci-fi novels strongly influenced the early creators of D&D, but they could have been influenced by other things like mythology or something like that, So that you do have a bit of a point there, Timothy. All right, guys, thank you so much. And the next episode of the RPG Pundit Encounter
will be in 2026.
Will be indeed. I believe it'll be the 4th of January, I guess. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. I don't know who the guest will be yet, but we will see. And we will see you guys then. And meanwhile, check out all my other videos if you haven't checked them out yet. Share this video after it finishes processing. And in the description of my video, I have a link to the Greyhawk Grognard's channel, so you can go there and subscribe if you haven't yet. And a list of all the different RPG products that I've got available, and you can check those out and be sure to find them. And especially if you were looking at any of the Pundit Files PDFs on the Red Room, be sure to pick them up. By the way, the Red Room store's also got I think a 50% off sale on all of their own products in the store. So it's a good moment to go buy some if you're planning to, if there were any that you find interesting. And they are such prolific authors. They've got so many books out there that it's pretty amazing. And you guys should go check them out. And while you're there, pick up, if you've got 350, pick up an issue or two of the Pundit Files. I guess that's everything for tonight. Just finished smoking. This is Burlington's anniversary pipe with Argento roots. And we will see you all later.
Thanks, everybody.